Okay. Good morning. Looking forward for today's ECOFIN, well, probably the main topic on agenda is how EU is supporting Ukraine as regards our financial support, where we have a macro-financial assistance of 18 billion euros for this year. Issues related on the work towards Ukraine reconstruction, how to mobilize financial support, how to coordinate this work internationally. Other ways how we can support Ukraine, including through solidarity lanes, possibilities to export Ukrainian agri-food products to third countries in a situation of blockage of Black Sea. Talking on this later topic, yesterday we reached an agreement with 5 neighboring member states and Ukraine how to proceed on these issues, as there has been problems both for the farmers in the 5 bordering member states and Ukrainian farmers. So yesterday we found a solution where we would temporarily put exceptional safeguard measures on 4 most sensitive agricultural products, so wheat, maize, rapeseed, sunflower seed. We would do safeguard investigations on some other products, provide financial support package of 100 million euros to farmers in 5 member states, and work on also upgrading solidarity lanes that they really facilitate the transit and exports. So in return, the 5 member states would remove the unilateral restrictions. So it means that the transit both to other EU member states and to third countries would proceed unimpeded. Well, it took lots of work, lots of back and forth, because the issue was sensitive both for 5 member states and Ukraine. But at the end of the day, we found a solution which takes into account interests both of the bordering member states and Ukraine.
Commissioner, do you think this solution can be implemented, and do you also think it will help with the problem that many products are getting into Europe but not into third world countries?
Well, as regards exceptional safeguards, that can be implemented in a matter of a few days, so there's a timeline, it's very fast. Safeguard investigations, that's longer, that takes several months, and of course we'll work to unblock the logistical bottlenecks which solidarity lanes are facing as soon as possible, because indeed the idea of solidarity lanes is to help Ukrainian agri-food exports, so we need to see where exactly those bottlenecks are and how to best address them, because on one hand we have a situation where farmers in 5 member states complain about oversupply, about prices being down for agricultural products. On the other hand, in developing countries, their prices are still elevated and there are still food supply issues. So clearly we see that primarily it's a logistical bottleneck which needs to be addressed.
The Ukrainian finance minister just said that the financial needs for next year would be difficult, that they will be less than the 18 billion euros that they were planned and scheduled for this year. I mean, do you think that this 18 billion euros or even more will be difficult to prepare as it was for this year, or would you use a similar mechanism and therefore it would be way simpler to prepare this new package?
What I would say, what's important is that there is a political will among EU member states to support Ukraine, and if this political will is there, we'll be able to prepare the next package. On exact amounts, it's too early to discuss, because we are still in the first half of this year and the situation is highly uncertain in the context of war. And second, we will soon need to have those discussions also in a context context of IMF program, because IMF is regularly reviewing their program, whether it's fully funded, looking also on the support of other donors. So also from that point of view, we will need to have discussions with other international donors, with IMF, to ensure that jointly we cover Ukraine's financing need also for next year. As you know, for this year, the estimate is that Ukraine's financing need is covered.
Do you think that the EU should really take the brunt of the reconstruction cost, and when should it start?
The reconstruction should start as soon as circumstances allow it to start, so that really depends now on short-term support, how much we are supporting Ukraine financially, economically, military, that Ukraine can defend itself and actually win the war, and that's when the full-scale reconstruction can start. In between, as you know, there's also this project which is called Quick Reconstruction, supporting Ukraine to restore to at least a certain level its critical infrastructure, which Russia has been deliberately destroying.
Finance Minister again said that he is hoping to use frozen Russian assets for the reconstruction. Are you optimistic that this will be possible? Is there any progress in this regard?
Indeed, the legal assessment of this possibility is ongoing. We know that the financing need for Ukraine reconstruction is going to be massive. The latest World Bank estimates were $411 billion, and the destruction continues every day. So clearly we need to look at all possible sources of financing. It clearly will require mobilization of the whole democratic world, EU, G7, international financial institutions, European financial institutions, but we also need to look at those Russian assets, including central bank assets. Thank you.
Ireland is coming to the doorstep. Ireland.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
I stand close to the
Sure.
spot.
Thank you. In here over the last couple of days, we've had some very interesting discussions on a range of economic issues. I think we had a particularly open and frank discussion at the informal lunch yesterday under the Swedish presidency. And at that meeting I did make the point that the monetary authorities have very difficult decisions to make in relation to interest rate policy, and in making those decisions, as well as the broader economic context, they do also have to take account of the real-life impact on people of the decisions that are made. And we are seeing in the transmission of monetary policy some pressure on mortgage holders who are seeing their interest rates increase now very significantly. And in particular, we have seen in the non-bank sector in Ireland very high interest rates being charged by some lenders, and that does place pressure on ordinary households. I think it's also important to make the point that as we seek to drive down inflation, it cannot all fall on monetary policy to do so. Industry has an important role to play in the private sector, that where costs are falling, we need to see the benefit of those reductions being passed on to consumers by way of price reductions. Otherwise, if that does not happen, then the burden of getting inflation down falls entirely on monetary policy. And we know what that means for people and for businesses by way of interest rates going higher and higher. So those are the two key points that I wanted to make this morning.
The high interest rates and also inflation are especially a problem for countries with a high debt. Yesterday we heard a lot of different statements of ministers about the fiscal guidelines. Are you still optimistic that a deal can be reached until the end of the year? And if not, what would that mean for Europe?
I think it's vitally important that an agreement is reached in relation to the economic governance review. From Ireland's point of view, what we want to avoid is a no man's land scenario where we have no rules in place in Europe. It is important that we have agreed budgetary and fiscal rules because it does require then all of us to manage our public finances within certain parameters. So I think the negotiations will be difficult and very challenging, undoubtedly, but I think where the political will is there, collectively we can work together and reach an agreement over the months ahead. I think that is better than just reinstating the old rules and not enforcing them. We need rules that work, that are actually applied and that are enforced by the authorities. And I think that is in Ireland's interests and it is in the interests of all EU member states. We're in a good position from an Irish perspective. The public finances are particularly healthy. We are running significant budget surpluses at the moment. Our national debt is falling all the while, and we are enjoying particularly strong taxation receipts, in particular from corporate tax, and we are now in the process of setting up a new long-term reserve fund to meet future ageing and demographic related costs. And so I'll be bringing proposals to my own government in Dublin in the weeks ahead to advance that proposal.
Do you agree with the German statement that at least 1% of the GDP has to be paid back each year, not the 0.5 suggested by the Commission?
I think these are details that we will need to negotiate. So the 3% deficit rule, the 60% debt rule will remain in place. I think that is a good thing. And now we are about negotiating the pathway to becoming compliant, and these are not issues that affects Ireland directly right now, and we hope that they don't in the future, but we recognise for many EU member states these issues are live and pressing, and of course collectively it is in all of our interests across the Union that member states pursue prudent and responsible budgetary policies. So we will have those discussions about the pathway to becoming compliant, and I think if the collective goodwill is there, then agreement can be reached.
Minister,
Do you
when
think
is
that it's
Ireland
time
going
for
to
the-
present its recovery plan fund payment?
Excuse me?
Your recovery fund payment, the first payment you haven't yet requested, was it what is holding it up, and when are you going to do so?
So Ireland is currently in the claims process in relation to the first claim under our National Recovery and Resilience Plan. So we have had an enormous amount of work to do to achieve the different milestones, to implement the various reforms. And my colleague, Minister Donoghue, President of the Eurogroup, now has responsibility for that area in the Department of Public Expenditure, National Development Plan Delivery and Reform. So I believe that Ireland will be in a position to draw down the funding.
Minister, do you think that it's high time for the ECB to slow down the monetary tightening and avoid this pain on households and consumers?
I would never seek to tell the ECB what to do. They have a difficult task. I share their objective of getting inflation down to 2% in the medium term. It is not going to be easy. In Ireland, we had some data yesterday that showed the flash estimate for the month of April. Inflation had fallen from 7% to 6.3%, and core inflation came in at 5.3%. So it is going in the right direction, but that is primarily because of base effects. Actual price levels are not falling, and that is why I make the point that where businesses and different sectors are benefiting from cost reductions, they do need to pass that on to the end consumer, because that will help to bring down prices and bring down inflation. Otherwise, the main tool that will be used is interest rate policy, and there are negative effects from continuing to increase interest rates, especially on vulnerable households in relation to their mortgage repayments, and also for certain companies who have variable or floating rate debt instruments. Thank you all very much.
with the elections. So the conference, they all of us after the elections.
Yes.
I'm very regret-oriented. But you're Yeah. I'm gonna get some coffee because I haven't had one yet, so I really. outside.
I think it's not officer. Who's the contrary of health?
你下载中天新闻网 App 了吗？我想和你分享一个下载中天新闻网 App 很关键的理由。有中天，有真相，只有中天不畏权势，敢说真话。请立刻下载中天新闻网 App， 和我们一起说真话，守护台湾。多一个下载，就多一分力量。